This is the 1930s, section 2, the final section of the 1930s, the New Deal's critics and the last days of the New Deal. And you can see in this political cartoon that is President FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, um, in his best Oliver Twist moment, where he is asking for more. In this case, instead of more porridge, uh, he's asking for more power, and that's one of the criticisms that you'll see is people felt like President Roosevelt got just way too powerful in this situation, and they were scared about what that could mean for future presidents. So first, let's talk about some limitations of the New Deal. Many aspects of the New Deal put women at a disadvantage. And unfortunately for women, this was kind of, I hate to say it this way, but it's kind of just the way it was. It was a social custom of the time. Women were seen as secondary. The men were the primary breadwinners, the people who were going to earn the paycheck for the family. Um, if women did get jobs, they got paid far less than men. Um, and in this particular situation with the New Deal, if a job was created or opened up, it went to men before it went to women. On top of that, we have segregation still happening in the South. Federal relief programs in the South reinforced racial segregation. African Americans in the southern part of this country, not only the southern part of the country, but this is where the problem was the biggest. They were not offered jobs at a professional level. They were not allowed to get skilled jobs. They were going to have very menial jobs and they're going to get very menial pay. As a matter of fact, if they had the same job as someone who was white, they were going to get paid less. The Social Security Act excluded farmers and domestic workers. Well, a lot of the people who we're talking about here were actually African American. That's 2/3 of the farmers and domestic workers were actually black. Um, the North was having their problems too. The problems were more in the cities, but the discrimination issues were way bigger in the South than they were in the North. Oftentimes, the African Americans were the last hired and the first fired. So, in terms of the New Deal criticism, the criticism came from both sides, both the what would be considered the conservative Republican side and the more liberal Democratic side, or the progressive Democratic side. And again, it's the fear was that FDR, the magician in this particular political cartoon, would keep going reaching into that hat and pulling out old reliable, pulling out that rabbit that represents, in this case, spending. And as you can see, that rabbit that represents spending has never failed him. So the Republican angle against the New Deal, which is a Democratic program, is that it does too much. Conservative Republicans tend to think that our government should stick its nose out of our business, and that problems within society should be fixed by private industry, private people, private business, and that the government should stick its nose out. Um, they felt that the government was handing out way too much, and they were calling this socialism. They were upset because they were paying higher taxes, and this tends to be the more wealthy people of the country. They're complaining about paying higher taxes because they're paying all these taxes and they're not benefiting from it. The middle class and lower class are. They also claim Social Security penalized successful, hardworking people by forcing them to pay into the system that's going to take care of others. Wealthy people, when they retire, don't necessarily need the Social Security checks, but the middle class and the lower class people rely on those checks oftentimes. So they're saying that why are we paying into a system that we're not going to benefit from? Same thing with the taxes. We're paying all this money in there, and then we're not going to see the benefit of it. And others who aren't working as hard, they would say maybe, are benefiting from our hard work. Now, on the Democratic side, on the more progressive side, and remember, FDR is a Democrat, and his programs were passed through Democratic Congresses. They said that the New Deal doesn't do enough. Again, the difference between the Republicans and Democrats tend to be Democrats, or one of the differences is that Democrats feel that the government needs to get involved and fix social problems, and that it's been left up to businesses and private industry before, and they have failed, according to the Democrats. They said that the New Deal does some good things, but it doesn't go far enough. That it's eliminating poverty only to a small degree. All right. Well, 1937, as we're coming closer to the end of the 1930s, and keep in mind, World War II is looming. It's actually going to start 1937, 38 over in Asia, and then 39 in Europe, and then eventually we're going to get involved starting in the end of 41. The economy collapses again in August of 1937, and listen, it's been on a decent recovery up to this point, but our economy tends to be like a roller coaster. It's going to go up, it's going to come down. Sometimes it's going to have a big, down. Sometimes it's going to have a big up, but in the end, it's going to have its ups and downs, kind of ebb and flow of our economy. In 1937, August, industrial production has fallen, unemployment is rising, and we entered into a recession, which is a period of slow business activity. Now, if you look at the chart, you can see, Roosevelt gets in 32, takes over in 30. Well, he gets elected in 32, takes over in 33, and you can see that there was a 12% annual growth up to 1937. That's really good, gradual, steady growth. 1937, you don't see a huge problem. You just see that the growth stopped. Things slowed down, but you can see, once things get going again, 38 into 39, things are going to get better again. Now, FDR wanted to balance the budget. Okay, what that means is our government is bringing in money from taxes and spending the same amount of money. Okay, so the money coming in is equal to the money going out. That's like if you get a paycheck for $500 and you spend $500, you have balanced your budget. You spent exactly what you earned. He cut spending on the New Deal programs that provided jobs because he was trying to cut his spending. And he increased taxes. Therefore, Americans had less money. So this is where, if they have less money and fewer people have jobs and they have less money, well, then they're going to spend less money. Then businesses are going to make less money. And if businesses make less money, then they're going to have to lay off people, and they can't expand their business, and they can't give you a raise. So this is a bad economic cycle, but luckily it's not going to last very long. We've already talked about some success for unions. We talked about the Wagner Act previously. New federal protections for unions made membership more attractive to workers. And union leaders were getting out there and really showing that, normal, everyday blue collar workers, that it would benefit them tremendously if they were to join a union. A new labor organization actually got started. It was called the Congress of Industrial Organizations, the CIO, which had been part of the AFL, the American Federation of Labor, previously, and they broke away and started their own labor organization. So now there are two major competing organizations, which isn't such a terrible thing. It's more opportunities for your basic blue collar workers. The CIO sought to organize nation's unskilled workers in mass production industries. So this is going to help your factory workers. In 1938, they already had 4 million members. And they formed what is called a coalition. A coalition is an alliance of groups with similar goals. And their goal, the CIO's goal, was to challenge working conditions in industry. Conditions were unhealthy. They were dirty. There weren't enough exits from a particular building. If something bad were to happen, how do people get out? How many hours you're working, child labor situations. The main tool that unions had was the strike, the refusal to work. One of the strike tactics that they did use was called the sit-down strike. So the way that sit-down strikes worked is that laborers would stop working but refuse to leave the building. They're all just going to sit in place and just kind of be in the way and not allow anyone else to come in to get the work done. Supporters outside set up picket lines. So you had your supporters outside picketing the building with signs and walking around and trying to intimidate people from coming in to replace the workers that are inside. And then the workers inside are just going to sit there in their spots and take up space and be an annoyance and not allow anyone else to come in and get the job done while they're not. This prevented the company from bringing in replacement workers, which were called scabs. These were substitute workers who were not part of the union. Sit-down strikes were outlawed by the Supreme Court as too potent a weapon and an obstacle to negotiations. They did make for a very tense situation in the workplace. Some labor strikes were successful, not all though, and oftentimes back in the day, these strikes would result in violent confrontations. All right, changing direction a little bit, just to finish off the New Deal. The New Deal's effect on culture. Artists were aided by federal funds allocated by Congress to support fine arts and to provide jobs. FDR was a big supporter of the arts, and he wanted to make sure that people with a creative side were able to keep being creative during this time of depression and anxiety and humiliation. Now he's trying to get people back up and working and on their feet, but he also wants to promote things that make you feel good. Um, some books that came out that became big hits at this time, reflecting the times, were the Good Earth and the Grapes of Wrath. Not going to lie to you, I mean I've read both of these books. I had to read them in high school. Neither one was necessarily my favorite. Not real exciting books, but they are certainly very representative of the time frame that we're talking about here, and the struggles that people had at the time. Considered fantastic books and some of the greatest of all time in terms of a novel and its relevance, but not exactly my favorite. Radio and movies were happening in the 1930s. The new medium of radio became a source of entertainment for American families. Um, so you had what were these traveling vaudeville shows now in studios recording, or well, not recording, but going live on the radios to send their messages or their routines out to everyone who had a radio. And the families would even sit and listen, together. While dad's reading the paper here and the kids are sitting there on the floor playing with whatever toys they have there and listening to that giant box in the back. That is the radio, the family radio, and you were able to listen. It was like a TV schedule. It had like a normal schedule of programming that was going to happen. And these guys are actually doing a live show where they have all these things in front of them for sound effects. So they have their script that they're following, and at the same time, they're also creating their own sound effects to make it sound real. Well, Americans needed an escape from the hard times of the Depression, and movies was a great way to do this. Starting in 1931, customers could go see a double feature. It would cost you a quarter. That would be two movies. So this is kind of a deal compared to what we pay today, right, for a movie. Or in 1933, that they could actually take their car to a drive-in theater. Some of you might be familiar with drive-in theaters. We do have a few of them in this area. Not too many in the country left, but we do have two in this area. One down like the Nanacoke Way, and one up in Circle Drive-In up on Route 6, north of Scranton. The biggest hits distracted Americans from the Great Depression and their humiliation, and they weren't expensive, so it was kind of a treat to be able to go. Two of the biggest hits of the day of the 1930s are movies that you've probably seen: The Wizard of Oz and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. These are the original Wizard of Oz and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. There, of course, there's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Looks like the looks I get from my students a lot. And of course, Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz, which is, by the way, a movie that is based on political commentary of the times of the 20s into the 30s. Finally, the WPA and the arts. FDR believed that the arts, as we were saying before, were not luxuries that people should have to give up in hard times. He was a big supporter of the arts, and he earmarked WPA funds to support unemployed artists, musicians, historians, theater people, and writers. And so there's a lot of art that was put together during this time frame that is still out and on display today or in museums, because this was an opportunity to help these people out and to continue the creative process. It's something we're always fighting for in our schools, right? To keep the arts programs. Well, that's what FDR did during the Great Depression. Other government projects also supported music and the visual arts.